What a what a beautiful way to celebrate the exceptionalism and beauty of America, to come here to talk about our shared value of religious freedom with my Ahmadiyya Muslim friends. So thank you, Amjad, for this invitation. And it's so appropriate that we're doing so today on the 250th anniversary of our nation and in the capital of Virginia, as it was two founding fathers from Virginia who shaped our nation's understanding of religious freedom for all: George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. So this July 4th, we should be re-inspired to cherish and defend and live out together the founding principles that they set forth. So George Washington, he set a high bar. Just months into office as the first president of the United States, he visited the city of Newport, Rhode Island in August 1790. The warden of the Truro Synagogue actually wrote President Washington to welcome him and express appreciation for his leadership. George Washington wrote him back a few days later, and he shared expansive thoughts about how these new United States would view citizens of different backgrounds. He stated forthrightly that, quote, "all possess alike liberty of conscience and immunities of citizenship." Mere toleration would not be enough. He dismissed any implication that rights were dependent on, quote, "the indulgence of one class of people over another." In other words, Washington said that one's faith would not affect a citizen's rights towards equality. And in the most quoted passage, he proclaims, quote, "for happily the government of the United States gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance." Many early immigrants came to the United States fleeing religious persecution. Records indicate that the synagogue's congregation had come from Europe with its consistent anti-Semitism and pogroms. They had fled persecution. They had felt it, much like Ahmadiyya Muslims are experiencing now in Pakistan. And while Washington's letter expressed the views of the first chief executive, Thomas Jefferson had been exploring these ideas years before. While in law school, we know that he purchased a copy of the Quran, and based on future events, he most likely consulted it, as when president, he delayed a state dinner to accommodate the Ramadan fast. But Jefferson grew up here in Virginia and saw the tension with church-state issues. During the colonial period, the Church of England was the established religion, and historians note that all Virginians were legally required to attend church once a month and to tithe. It was government-enforced piety. However, as many Virginians turned to the Baptist denomination, authorities, both governmental and ecclesiastical, did not condone, and unlicensed Baptist preachers faced fines and jail, and mobs would assault their tent services. And it was in response that Thomas Jefferson wrote the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, which made clear the rights of conscience for all. It begins with this powerful opening phrase, quote, "whereas Almighty God hath created the mind free." Jefferson's statute prohibited government interference in religious affairs, all because of his concern about the treatment of religious minorities. The final version was passed in 1786, which inspired the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, whose drafter was another Virginian, James Madison. But the Virginia statute was a declaration of independence for religious freedom, putting forth revolutionary ideas for America and the world. So Washington and Jefferson, they laid a firm foundation for the United States, building a new polity based on values rather than blood. Certainly glaring inconsistencies with their personal lives regarding slavery shock the conscience today. But what they established was good. It has served us well. It has been a North Star. So from the beginning, religious freedom has been inextricably intertwined into the American experiment. But while a foundation stone, we certainly have work to do here at home to combat racism, anti-Muslim hatred, anti-Semitism, and other forms of discrimination. Yet, we should be proud about how the United States truly stands apart because of the religious liberty protections we have here. I've visited many of the broken places of this world. I've seen how authoritarian regimes will persecute individuals for how they pray or what they believe or don't believe. And I've seen how your community is horribly persecuted through laws and violence in Pakistan. Every American, every day, should thank God that we live in the US of A in the 21st century, and for the great blessings of liberty and prosperity He has bestowed on us. But those Thanksgivings force us to ask a question. What should we do with those blessings? How should we steward them? I believe the principle of loving our neighbors, both here and abroad, should guide our response. What's wonderful is how we all revere Jesus, and we all agree in love of neighbor. I so appreciate your slogan, love for all, hatred for none. And as a Christian, I'm commanded by Jesus Christ to love my neighbor, both persecuted fellow Christians, but also others like persecuted Ahmadiyya Muslims. We're called to help everyone, even those from other faiths. Now, of course, we shouldn't pretend that Christians and Muslims agree on every theological point, but we can agree that coercion, persecution, and violence violate human dignity. We can agree that it's wrong, and we can, as Americans and people of faith, agree to do something about it. Towards this, in April, I took up the leadership of the new Everett Center for Global Religious Freedom. It's an initiative of Dallas Baptist University, and we operate on campus in Texas and in Washington, D.C., where I am based. The center's mission is to inspire and equip students, churches, and policymakers to advance religious freedom for all. We want to help persecuted Christians, of course, but we're also called to help others who are facing persecution. And so our new center is committed to fighting for your religious freedoms, for my religious freedoms, for everyone's religious freedoms. In Dallas, we've convened Christians, Jews, Baha'is, and Muslims, including Ahmadiyya Muslims, with representatives from the United Nations. We've launched a prayer and advocacy campaign about persecuted Christians and Uyghur Muslims in China. And we hosted Amjad last year via Zoom at our annual gathering so that Christians could learn about Ahmadiyya persecution and pray that God would provide protection and rescue to your community. But we've got to work together. We can't do it alone. The problem's too big. And here at home, we must push back when others want to pull us away from these foundational values. So if we want a society that gives to bigotry no sanction and to persecution no assistance, then Christians must defend mosques, Muslims must defend synagogues, Jews must defend churches, and Americans must defend fellow Americans regardless of what they believe. Washington and Jefferson, these two great Virginians, these two great Americans, gave us the architecture and an example that still works 250 years later. But we can't be passive. We must continually commit to the challenge of defending religious freedom for everybody, everywhere, all the time. And that's the hard work before us. But thankfully, we know that God, in his wisdom, will guide our efforts if we seek his will. So may our shared commitment as Americans and people of faith inspire us to help others, regardless of their beliefs, every day. Thank you very much.